All right. Good afternoon. This is Angel, your local Bakersfield realtor here on the Living in Bakersfield channel. I realize that a lot of this NAR commission conversation, you might have been inundated with it as far as like how many videos you've seen and watched and all the comments that you guys want to leave and tell me that realtors aren't worth their commission. And so I thought I'd break it down, and here's what I want you to understand. So I'm going to talk about it for buyers, for sellers, and what to expect going forward. And then I might put on my tinfoil hat because I think there's a bigger picture going on. And I think it's time to actually talk about that, call out the elephant in the room. So first thing about this is that I am Angel, your local Bakersfield realtor. As I have said, this is the Living in Bakersfield channel. If you would like to consider moving to Bakersfield, calling this place home, being a part of this incredible community, and living a really beautiful life in the state of California with an affordable home that doesn't sink you, I would love to help you make that your reality. My team and I would love to help you get qualified, get under contract, and buy a home. So if you would like to do that, a call, a text, an email can all get that process started. The information is in the description below. Now, regarding what happened with the National Association of Realtors and the settlement that just happened and how things are going to work going forward, let's first talk about what it really, the bottom line is all about: transparency. Not that things weren't transparent before. I think there's been a lot of misconceptions about what it should have been or could have been versus what made the lawsuit happen, and then now what the National Association of Realtors has had us do going forward, which is actually going to benefit you, buying or selling. With the exception of a few. Buying new construction, we haven't gotten that one sorted. And my veterans, I love serving my veterans. I usually say that buying real estate should be the easiest part of having served our country. Right now, there's a big fat question mark over this portion of all of these changes for my veteran buyers. So if you are a veteran buyer and you want to buy a house before July, let's get going because things are going to change in July. And right now, they don't have any answers for how that's going to work for your loan, for you being represented by a professional. And I don't want you to get hosed. I really don't. So I would really request that if you are a veteran and you are thinking about buying and moving to Field, you're going to need a realtor first and foremost, but let's do it sooner rather than after July. So anyway, so that's the first and foremost thing is I want to talk about the fact that it is really, at the end of the day, this whole thing with NAR, because I'm tired of saying National Association of Realtors, NAR is about transparency. So previously, a lot of the drama on the internet has said that the 6% commission has gone away and buyers are going to have to pay for their realtors. First of all, 6% commission was never decided. I know the Wall Street Journal likes to throw out a lot of drama, but that was never decided. Negotiating commissions has always been a thing. If you haven't negotiated, then maybe you just didn't have a right mindset about what a realtor did. So praise the Lord, I'm here to help you. So the thing that's going to help you as a buyer to know what your realtor is going to do is for you to understand that everything is negotiable except for your representation. You are going to need to be represented. The trolls on the internet, and I can show you a few if you'd like, would like to tell you that you as a buyer don't need an agent. You can get through this process on your own. First of all, why would you? I can go change my own oil, but why? I don't want to do that. I'm going to make a mess. I'm going to break a law because you got to dispose of the oil a certain way. Who wants to do that? Take it to a professional. Like I can pull my own tooth too, but why would I want to do that? Especially when it comes to buying a house. So you need representation on what is presumably one of the largest purchases of your life. Why would you want to wing and sling that? So let's back that bus up and realize you do need representation. You don't want to miss out on what is in the seller disclosures. You don't want to miss out on, did the solar get transferred? Is it in my name? How do I do that? What's going to happen on the inspection? Am I in charge of paying for that inspection? How do I do that? What's the company I use? So there's a million and ways from Sunday that I can sit here and sell why you need a realtor. You shouldn't even really think about why you need a realtor. You just need to know, heck to the yeah, I need people to make sure that I'm not getting hosed financially. And if you don't have that representation as a buyer, the chances of you getting hosed go through the roof. So the amount of money that you could potentially pay for a realtor's commission, potentially pay, I'm going to get to that in just a second, the amount of money that you could potentially pay for a realtor's commission is far less than what you could get hosed when you buy a house that might be on a default, or excuse me, an earthquake fault, that might not have had a really strong inspection, and there's some really big foundational issues that if you're buying it without a realtor, you probably wouldn't have known where to look. You can't Google everything. You do need professionals for a lot of this process. Now, when I say potentially, so normally since 2 weeks ago, uh, realtors have had a document called a buyer broker representation. And some realtors have used it and some realtors haven't. Well, the law now has changed straight up. We do not get to show you house number 1 until you have signed that buyer broker representation. Now, that buyer broker representation lets you know, yes, I am going to be paid on this transaction. There's nothing wrong with that. I will never apologize, and no one in our industry should apologize for being paid to do a really good job. I understand that there are shysters out there. Always will be, always have been, whatever. But there are those of us that are not. And we're not going to lower our standard because they're shysters. I'm going to keep my standards high and represent you so that you don't get hosed. Really, transparency. The same thing with that buyer broker representation. So on that buyer broker representation, and by the way, I'm going to pull this up for a hot second that shows just a few of the things that we realtors do as your representation, whether we're helping you buy or sell. So one of the things that we could do is, help you through the process of, all of the ins and outs of buying the home. But the buyer broker representation, straight up, transparency is what we're all about right now, and especially going forward, is letting you know what I'm going to be paid on the transaction, not dollars and cents, percentages. So if it says that I only work for 4% as your buyer broker agreement, because I work for somebody, I work for Coldwell Banker, every agent has somebody above them. It's rare that they're just, a lone wolf. So we all have somebody that we work for. We have to hang our license somewhere, and we have things to pay for that brokerage. So my brokerage is saying, you absolutely, the state of California, you absolutely, National Association of Realtors, you absolutely cannot show house number 1 without getting into this buyer broker representation. And you have to be transparent about it. You have to say what you are going to potentially be paid on that transaction representing the buyer. Now, if you are going to sign that with me, that means that when we go under contract, I'm kind of part of the negotiation now. That wasn't really a conversation before, but now my fees, my brokerage fees, now become part of the equation. It's again part of the transparency. It wasn't ever hidden before. It just wasn't first and foremost. It was in paperwork that you would have gotten later as a buyer, but it wasn't front and center. No big deal. So here's the other thing to think about. When we are going forward with some of this information on, with the settlement and all of the things that are going to change, some of the fodder out here and some of the misinformation has been that sellers don't have to pay your representation, you as the buyer, that the seller can be like, whatever, figure it out. I don't know, you got to pay her. Well, that's adorable, but it's not necessarily the truth. So a seller has always been able to say what they will and won't pay the buyer's agent. That's not changed. What is changed is that it's not going to be publicly blasted on all MLSs. You might see it on Zillow, but even that's questionable, or Realtor or one of the others. I don't work for them, so I don't know their rules. But going forward, it will not be buyer broker is going to earn 3% on this sale. Remember, I work for somebody and somebody works for somebody. So it always looks sexy on the net sheet or whatever that, ooh, $17,000. I'm not walking out with $17,000. I can guarantee you that. But that conversation with a seller is always negotiable. And then a seller can decide what they're going to pay. If I have a representation contract with you as my buyer, that I'm going to be paid 4%. And the seller says, well, I really only want to pay 2.5 to the buyer broker. So then you, as my buyer, we have a conversation to have, don't we? I'm not interested in helping you lose the house. My job is to get you into the house. But then you and I have to have a conversation. I can either decide to say, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, I need you to come up with the additional 1.5% for my commission, my broker arrangement that you signed before we went into house one. See how this works? Or we have to move on and we have to go find another house because this seller is not willing to pay my brokerage and me for your representation through this process. That should make you a little bit concerned of like, well, wait a minute, if they're not even willing to pay my agent, what the heck? So I'm not trying to put sellers in a negative light. I just want you to understand, like, it's not about us brokers. It's more about what the conversation needs to be with sellers. Now, let me put on my listing agent hat when I talk to my sellers. So when you are a seller, you have a lot of options, right? Because your buyer is going to bring you an offer, which is going to be their loan, which is going to presumably pay off your home loan. They're going to take over your solar. That's usually a lease of some sort or an arrangement that they have to pay. The buyer has to pay closing costs. So the buyer's coming in with a whole lot of money to help you, Mr. Seller, out. That's not changed. You, as the seller, get to decide what you're going to pay that buyer broker in that arrangement. If I'm a seller, if I'm your listing agent and we get a really bad offer, meaning like they didn't even date the son of a gun, like give me a break. Is this agent new? Are they just, winging and slinging? We don't know. But what happens is you're going to have to decide like, okay, this agent wrote a really crappy offer and they have an agent that's only taking 2.5% of what I'm going to offer the buyer broker. But this agent wrote a really strong offer and they're only asking for 2% on the buyer broker agreement. So you're going to have to decide like really good offer, crappy agent, weak offer, good agent, right? Like meaning like good, you're going to get more proceeds as a seller. I think the conversations that you can have going forward are what will it look like to you as a seller to not offer anything? That's going to really decrease the amount of those of us that are really good agents that are going to want to step foot one into your lovely home on 123 Main Street. I'm not bringing my client if you're not even going to have a conversation about paying a buyer broker agreement. But I have to at some point because I don't want to break the law. That's called steering. And there's all kinds of rules against my profession guiding people around certain houses. I cannot do that legally. That breaks all kinds of fair housing laws. So you as a seller are going to need to have a conversation with your listing agent. If I am listing your home, you're going to need to decide, okay, I can't put it out on the MLS, but I can let them know I will pay a buyer broker to walk their buyer through. Since the buyer's coming in and paying off my home loan, since the buyer's coming in and taking over my solar, since the buyer's coming in with their own closing costs, maybe I should make sure that the buyer has good representation so that I can make sure that their loan goes through. They have a local lender. All of these things we buyer agents do for our clients before we ever bring you an offer. If we're good, I'm good. I'm really good. Some of them out there aren't. So But you as a seller will be able to decide that with your agent before you ever go on market. What are you going to offer? What's that going to look like? Transparency, right? So as we go forward with this, the things that I really want to caution people on, again, my veterans, the VA loan straight up says, I wish I had the verbiage in front of me. The VA loan straight up says that a veteran cannot pay for their own representation. That's a contracts, inspections. This is just like 197 things that we agents do. And I don't think it's in this document. This is from the NAR. Anyway, veterans cannot, per their loan arrangements, cannot pay for their own representation. So here's a scenario. I work for 4% on my buyer broker representation. The selling agent or the sellers have said, we'll pay 2.5%. So we've got a 1.5% difference again. I cannot pass that on to my veteran buyer at all, especially right now, because it's not even decided as part of the lawsuit. So that is Mayday. They've got to fix that, or else we've got veterans out there not being able to be represented in any fashion. And I don't think that that does any veteran any service for what they've done for our country, served in whatever capacity. We don't need to make it harder for them to buy a house. We really don't. It's supposed to be the easiest part of having served. We don't need them to jump through more hoops. They can't physically pay for their buyer agent. So NAR still has to settle some of that dust. New construction. If you are buying new construction, generally speaking, the girls in the office or the gentlemen in the office that represent the builder is the seller, which is why we always say, hey, you've got to have representation when you go walking into those model homes and you say, I'd like to get, lot C over there, and I'd like to have that one built for me. And I'm going to pick out the flooring and the tile and the whatever. And you're going to, walk through that entire transaction without representation. We realtors scream like, get representation. Get one of us to walk you through that process. We can negotiate for you. We can make sure that certain things are done for you as the buyer through new construction. Well, part of this settlement is also a little gray, hasn't been decided on how that's going to play out for you being represented on new construction. Generally speaking, the margins for builders and what they offer we buyer agents is usually smaller on the smaller side anyway. So for us to be eliminated completely out of that conversation, I think is very dangerous for you as a buyer. I think it just sets up a whole host of things that could really backfire for you buying new construction. So those are the two things that I would say they need to get this thing figured out before July, before they start rolling it out. The other thing that I would like to discuss, let me check my notes here. So with that buyer broker agreement, like I've said, the NAR has said that we are no longer allowed, because sometimes people were really steadfast on like buyer broker agreement all the time, every day, any day that ends in Y, buyer broker agreement. And sometimes it would depend on the buyer, what the situation was. Am I selling their other house? Do I need a buyer broker if I'm selling their other house? Like, it's okay. I know they're going to use me on the buy because I'm selling their house. So there would be a lot of things that we would kind of like not stand firm on, because we want to serve our client always first and foremost. That's always what we want to do the best, and what is always, or what should always be, our first priority. There are agents out there, like I've said, that are shysters. And by the way, if any of you have any comments on this, I'm checking to see if there are any yet. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the description below, or description. Leave the comment so that it pops up on my screen so that I can answer those for you. So back to the conversation about the buyer broker agreement. So the buyer broker agreement is going to let me know that all of the work that I'm doing to get you into the houses, to get you qualified, we'll get you qualified first, then we get you into houses, to figure out what the scenarios are for the sellers, to figure out, are these going to fall on your price points? Does the solar affect your loan? All of that stuff. Excuse me. That helps me know, the buyer broker agreement helps me know that you're not looking for a side piece. You're not looking for another realtor that does it cheaper or does it whatever, or I know you're committed to me like I'm committed to you. Because I think we also need to have a conversation of like, are you going to be a customer, which you're just getting the MLS listings as they come and you just want to shop and see what it's like in Bakersfield? Praise the Lord, do it all day. I can absolutely set that up for you. Angel, I'd like to see what 4-bedroom, 2-bath house with a pool looks like in 93309. Can you send me those? Absolutely. That does not mean that we have a buyer broker agreement. That means that you are deciding to shop in that zip code in my community. If you say, I'm ready to get qualified and buy, then we will change our relationship from you being a customer to you being a client. We sign the buyer broker agreement. We make sure you're qualified to buy. Then we go on down the road to make sure that we can get you into a home. The buyer broker agreement is going to talk about how long I represent you, transparency. It's going to talk about what I'm going to make on the sale, transparency. Nothing is ever going to be hidden. Not that it was before, it just wasn't as out in the open, like I said. The other question that is on the internet that is causing all kinds of ruckus is that everybody thinks that this is going to drop home prices. And I just want to laugh. Are you kidding me? Why would a seller lower their home price? It's the absolute opposite. It's going to increase them. It's going to increase them. If you have a seller that has two beautiful offers and one, the buyer agent is only being charging 3%, and one, the buyer agent is charging 2.5%, and they're both beautiful, clean, even, tight offers. Do you think a seller is going to say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take the 2.5% agent and give you the difference between my sale. Oh, that's a bad description. Hang on, let me try this again. So we've got two beautiful offers. We've got one at 3%, one at 2.5% for the buyer broker. Do you think the seller is going to choose the one where they have to pay more? No, they're going to pay the one that they've got to have. They've got to pay the buyer broker less. They're not going to go, oh, you know what? I don't want to make as much money on my sale. I'm going to go ahead and pay them less if they're two, even offers. Then we have to have a conversation, right? Of like, okay, imagine there being 3 or 4. We are in a multiple offer situation on several different price points in town. Several different price points are getting multiple offers right now. So if you've got a buyer broker, and the offers are all really good, and this one's at 2, and this one's at 2.5, and this one's at 3, what do you think you're going to choose as a seller? So no, I don't think it's going to help home prices go up or down. I think they're going to continue to increase. And I don't think that this is going to make all of these sellers just suddenly want to not make as much money on their sale. Absolutely not. I think that's ambitiously optimistic and absolutely not going to happen. The final thing I wanted to discuss is that absolutely none of this is, with the exception of the buyer broker agreement, I don't think any of this is really, the dust has not settled as far as what's going to happen with the VA and new construction, especially. But some of the other particulars hasn't really been settled. But I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on here for a minute because of the way the settlement, let me drop this out, the way the settlement went down, the way the conversation went down with the Department of Justice getting involved in the real estate industry. They weren't invited. This wasn't a criminal proceeding. This was a civil proceeding. So why the Department of Justice needs to be involved, I do not know. Other than, here comes my tinfoil hat, the Department of Justice is playing kissy face with the big 3, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. We all know that. I've done video after video talking about how they are building entire communities like Pottersville from It's a Wonderful Life. Like, just, they're building a community and nobody will own anything. Everybody will be renters. So they want a renting society. They win when everybody is a renter. They win, the big 3 who are playing kissy face with the DOJ, they win when they've made it even harder and more expensive for all y'all to buy a house. Because what are you going to do? You're going to shrug. You're going to be like, I don't know. I ain't going to do it. It's too costly. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I'll rent. and then they win. Those three big dogs, State Street, BlackRock, and Vanguard, something like $22 trillion combined in real estate right now. So if they make the waters muddied by asking the DOJ to step in where they were not invited and putting down laws about what we realtors can make and can't make, making us potentially stepping us into an hourly position. No, thank you. We're independent contractors all day, every day. We work for ourselves. We're self-employed. We're small businesses. I think that they win when they have overwhelmed you. They win when you don't want to step into homeownership. And they win when you're not invested in your community, when you don't vote the way they would, when you don't vote based on what's best for your community, when you don't participate in anything like that benefits your community. And when you are a homeowner, all of those things happen. You want to add shelves in your house. You go to Home Depot. You can't do that in a rental. You want to paint. You can't do that in a rental. 9 times out of 10, you are not going to be allowed to paint. You want to put a built-in. You want to expand the kitchen. You want to put in an island. You can't do that in a rental. But when you do that, when it's your own home, you're spending money in the local Home Depot. You are employing your local community that works at Home Depot. So all of this benefits the big three. Remember, I told you I've got my tinfoil hat on, but connect the dots. They benefit by you being overwhelmed and thinking, I can't pay, because they're making it harder for you to pay. They're making it so that we realtors are in the way so that you get frustrated or overwhelmed and say, forget it. I'm not doing it. I don't have the money to pay off their loan, to get qualified for a loan, to qualify for solar, which if you're buying in California, it's a conversation, to make sure that I can pay for my closing costs because the seller won't pay those, and to pay for my realtor. So yeah, they've made it really, really challenging for you as a buyer. So, and by the way, that's not transparent. That's on the DL. That's in the back end. That's playing low and slow in the background. But those of us that are connecting the dots are like, excuse me, how about that for some transparency? How about everybody pay attention to that? So going forward, what to expect. We will absolutely continue to have a great relationship getting you into a house. I look forward to working with you. I look forward to handing you keys. I look forward to you getting qualified. I look forward to you, especially if you're a veteran, calling me going, Angel, we need to get after this today because I'm not going to be able to, I don't know what's going to happen in July. I need to get a house before July if I'm a veteran. New construction, same thing. Other than that, nothing has changed. When I sell your house, we're going to have a giant discussion about what you can potentially offer your buyer, what you can potentially expect from your buyer, what the timelines are. All of the same things are going to happen when we meet for me to sell your house, what your proceeds, what your potential net is going to be. And yes, what I'm going to be paid as your agent. I am a top-notch agent. I am not a Walmart agent. You can get a shirt at both stores, but one's going to be quality, one's going to be something to cover your privates. Like, it's not the same thing. So I am here to tell you that I'm not going to be discounting. I'm not going to be stepping away from the quality of service that I offer you, whether I'm helping you buy a house or sell a house. I will absolutely continue to be as excited and transparent all the way through the process. Straight up, I'm not here to play games. And as far as that goes, nothing has changed. The contract, the buyer broker agreement, yes, that has changed. I will not show you a house until that is signed. Absolutely cannot. I love my license. I love what I do. And I'm not willing to jeopardize that if you don't sign that sign that contract. Not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker. It's not a conversation. It just means that we're committed to each other. We're not getting married or anything. It just means that I'm working for you. You're sticking by me. It's easy peasy and you can trust me. So all that to say, NAR has a lot of things to still work out for my veterans and new construction, especially. Transparency, transparency, transparency is what you can expect going forward. If you've already worked for me or worked with me, then you know I'm that way anyway. So for me, this doesn't change a single thing. Like I'm an open book. You want to talk? I mean, I put on my tinfoil hat for you. Come on. So nothing for you to be worried about. Nothing for you that to expect to change, other than a piece of paper that says that I'm absolutely still working for you. The end. But anyway, all that to say, I hope this helps. I don't have any comments right now. Maybe I'll get some later. I expect to hear from some of you who have made it very clear that you don't want to ever pay a realtor. And I think that's adorable. Go pull your own tooth then. That's fine. I I don't understand that in any fashion. Go pull your own tooth. Your largest asset that you will ever buy once, twice, or three times a lady. It doesn't matter. You need a professional. There are things you just don't know, and you cannot Google everything. So good luck with that. But for all y'all that absolutely know the value of what we bring to represent you on a buy or a sell, I look forward to hearing from you. I will see you around town.